Welcome to the 3A Athletics Workshop Podcast. Deep dives through the journey of youth sports, what parents experience, what coaches experience, and most importantly, what your kids experience. We'll also feature the latest information, tips, tools, and resources to help parents, coaches, and athletes navigate and improve the culture of youth sports. And now, the 3A Athletics Workshop Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 1 of the 3A Athletics Workshop Podcast. We're looking forward to covering a topic that's very close to us, identity. It's really the foundation of why we formed the company 3A Athletics. And our whole goal is to go into the world of youth sports and help parents, coaches, and players understand the identity formation and how fragile this experience is for those kids. My name is Travis Snyder. I'm a retired Major League Baseball player. I spent 16 seasons playing professionally. After retirement, I decided to co-found 3A Athletics with my partner here, Seth Taylor. Seth is a therapeutic life coach who works with MLS and MLB soccer players and baseball players. And in Seth's experience, he's written a lot of books. He's a speaker and somebody who we look to for our director of content to be able to bring the information we feel is most important for parents. So welcome, Seth.
Yeah, man.
3A Athletics, as I mentioned, our whole goal is to improve the culture of youth sports. And our focus is taking parents on a deep dive through the journey of youth sports and what they experience, what coaches experience, and what players experience. And we're excited to have you guys with us on this journey, and we're going to get right into it. What is identity, and what does it have to do with youth sports?
Yeah. So in this kind of conversational thing, this is going to be great because we can just talk because I'm an expert at this, as are you.
Yep.
And the cool thing is I don't have 16 years of professional sports in the thing. So as I kind of bounce this information into the space here, I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Yep.
Because, I've played high-level sports in college and I've worked with players for 10 years. But it's, when we get into the conversation of identity, the reason we're hitting it first is because that is the foundation. Identity formation for athletes is the same as identity formation for anybody else. One of the problems with youth sports, of course, is that we don't really do formation of a player based on what formation of a child should be, right? Identity is the task, essentially best defined as the task that every human being must accomplish in their first 10 years of life. Give or take a few months, about their first 10 years is what we call the developmental years. And in those years, a human being is creating a sense of identity, a sense of I am safe, I am loved, no matter what. It's essentially the answer to the question, who am I? So the difference between who you are and what you do is where we find the concept of identity. But what we do is built on who we are. And one of the reasons why we struggle so much with identity crisis, we were talking earlier about the midlife crisis and what that is when we come to a certain age, right? That identity crisis that everyone goes through at some point is because if your identity isn't strong, it's not secure, and you try to build a really strong sense of what you do on a shaky foundation, then you never quite feel right? You never quite feel that sense of purpose. You never quite feel that sense of accomplishment. It's a very, very fragile thing. So a lot of clients that I've worked with come to me, either they're transitioning from one phase of their life to another, or they've accomplished all this amazing stuff and they still don't quite feel right. And it's because the identity is shaky. Yeah. So in those first 10 years of your life, it's essentially built on the idea of, you got 3 kids under 5, right? Or under 7, right? So they're all 100% in their foundational years, which means everything they do, from the freakouts to the food craziness to the sports and all that feedback, is 100% based in them trying to answer 2 questions. What makes me safe? What makes me valuable? Who am I? Based in that. And it's based almost 100% in the gaze of mom and dad. Yeah. And then, of course, as they get a little older, these supplemental concepts come in. Other people, other adults, other coaches is a really good example, right? But when it comes to mom and dad and their kind of stance towards the kids, it's, it answers those 2 questions. What makes me safe? What makes me valuable? They do.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point. Yeah. When we started working together, my biggest goal was unpacking the identity that I had created, starting in the developmental years of playing youth sports. Yeah. Being a first-round draft pick, playing in the major leagues, having some level of success, and then dealing with a lot of adversity. I found it very difficult at that point when we started working together to be able to separate who I was from what I did, right? And I'm grateful for the opportunity to have played Major League Baseball and all the wonderful things that come with that. But I also realize as a parent, when we start to put that pressure on our child to form that identity at too young of an age and start to put the labels on them, that's a very dangerous space for us as parents to enter without that foundation of what is our own identity, right? And then how do we help support those kids as they're going through this experience of school and sports and friends and social settings? It's a very fragile time. And I think for me, that's why 3A athletics is so important, is to be able to help parents, coaches, and players understand what we're really experiencing going through the experience of youth sports.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we've been on this journey together, right? And people are listening and people are going, man, this is really important. This is really compelling. But you can see at the same time, there's almost a fear of really diving into this because we have built the identity of the entire way we do youth sports in America is built off of this strange, fragile identity where we're just trying to build soccer players, but we're not paying attention to the damage that's being done and what we've done to our kids, right? I mean, and there's this fear. I don't know if you're running in this so far because your kids are playing sports, right? You know, my son is just starting to play sports. My daughter's just about to start, and they're 10 and 11 years old. And there's this real fear that if we let these kids develop and feel deeply safe in these developmental years, that they're never going to develop a skill. It's such a normalized part of our culture, to thrust them into that arena, no matter how dangerous it is. And that's what we don't, that's honestly the biggest problem in youth sports is that identity formation in those first 10 years, putting people in a competitive arena, it creates it's like a powder keg in some ways, right? Because kids aren't ready to lose. Does that make sense? They're not ready to lose. They're not ready to compete. They're not ready to put something on the line. They're just not. And so, what we're trying to do with 3A Athletics is not tear the system down. We're trying to create something that mitigates that so that parents become aware of their own identity formation, that own kind of fragile, soft, structure that's inside of them, so that when they actually look at the kids on the field, they can start to do their own work, rework their own identity, do their own healing if necessary, do their own therapy if necessary, so that the kids can just go out and play. And then when the kids are able to look over at mom and dad and get that subconscious feedback, am I safe, am I valuable, that it's there, no matter what.
And I think you hit on it, right? It's developing trust and creating a safe space. And I think that was one of my biggest challenges when I entered this space with my first child, having the experience of being a professional, wanting to instill things we've talked about in other content with grit and discipline and focus and motivation, but not really understanding what a 6, 7, and 8-year-old kid is actually experiencing, or even younger, right? My oldest started at a younger age. I know a lot of parents out there listening are feeling that pressure to not only keep their kids engaged in activities, right, for the benefits of exercise and just social interaction, but there's this ever-growing pressure in the world of youth sports that you have to start your kid young, that you have to specialize in a sport, and if you don't, they're going to get left behind. I think that's something every parent can relate to on some level that you alluded to earlier, is how do I actually give my kid a chance to go out there and experience these things, right, without me putting my own baggage into the mix. And I think for most of us parents, we get into our 20s and into our 30s and we start to kind of figure out what is our identity, right? Because going through high school and then post-high school, college, whatever your route was, there's a lot of different achievements and there's a lot of different failures along the way. And I think one thing that we've discussed at length and we can go into now is how that identity formation in adults trickles down to kids. And you alluded to it earlier with parents having to be open-minded to get outside of their comfort zone, right? We talked about the comfort zone identity. This is who I am, this is what I do, and I kind of just stay in my lane and I'm not looking to grow. Well, we're looking at our kids and we're trying to teach our kids, hey, this is how you learn by failing. You have to reflect on that failure and make adjustments as you move forward. But for parents, what would you say is one or two of the biggest items for them to really focus on as they're entering this space or they're already in this space now to realize, okay, if I can focus on one or two things with my child, create that safe space for them, what is that going to lead to? Yeah, that's a good question. The main thing you hit on it earlier right there when you were saying that when we started working together, you started to realize nobody's really talking about or seems aware at all of what a child
is going through at 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And the truth is we project onto the kids a type of developmental phase that they're actually not in.
Yeah.
We treat young athletes like they're much older than they actually are. And that's why I was saying it's a fascinating thing how much we've for decades we've been doing research in child development, but we don't build player development on that.
Yeah.
Right. And and a lot of that's because we haven't built ourselves on it. Right. The adults' identity formation, you can see it if you walk on a sideline or you sit in the bleachers and watch a ball game. You can see them they're projecting their need. Essentially, identity formation, how it shows up in a wounded sense, is insecurity. Right. It's the sense of, what's the right way to say this? It's the sense that there is a parenting task left undone, right? And so now if the task is undone, then my world is required to parent me at some level. And that's most people, right? That's most people. Most human beings get to adult life and there are tasks left undone. So we get to adult life and then what we do is we start creating narrative structures around us to do that parenting work. And unfortunately, the youth sports world is full of parents who are projecting part of that work onto the kids, and which is why we put the pressure on them we do, right? We rush them through their developmental years as quickly as possible, which is like building a building and just kind of going, hey, let's just use plastic for the foundation because it'll go faster, right? And then we'll start building, and we build really fast. You're a great example of that, right? The phenom, right? You were the youngest player in the major leagues, right?
Second youngest.
Yeah, second youngest player in the major leagues, right? So you have this kind of shoddy foundation, but you can sure start building quickly. You know, where over here, we're going to take several years to build foundations. And of course, in the end, that building's going to go a lot higher, right? That's the idea. It's a different way of thinking, and it triggers this type of anxiety in us while we're watching all the other kids take off. Even though they're all going to hate the game by 13 and they're all going to be, done by 20, we're watching them take off and something triggers inside of us that it's not that my kid's not okay. That's what we say. It's that I'm not okay. Right? It's the anxiety that honestly, like Hero, this book we wrote and this company we started we're trying to protect kids, help kids. We're trying to help kids get better and improve and enjoy the game and maintain their love and relationship. More than anything though, I want to help these parents, man. Because the anxiety on those sidelines is really intense, even though most of them aren't aware of it. And that's the hard part. If I went out there and said, hey, I'm trying to help you guys, they'd go, I don't need help. I'm good, man. I'm good. And I hear that all the time when I give talks in front of parents. There's this lack of awareness, but at the same time, there is an awareness because they all know it's toxic. And they're all going, yeah, the youth sports culture is toxic. And at the same time, I'm going, yeah, but can we acknowledge that means we're toxic because we're creating this?
Yeah, and I think when we talk about comfort zone, right, most parents have kind of found that comfort zone. If you have one or multiple children, you understand the stress, you understand the pressure that you feel to provide them with everything that they need. And in that experience for parents entering that space of youth sports, I feel like in my own experience, and I'm sure you could allude to this too, being able to find a way to get your kid involved in a sport with friends and or family, right, is a good way to break into the space to help create a little bit safer experience for them, knowing that they have kids around them that they're familiar with, or a coach, say, that they're familiar with too. But as a coach who coaches my oldest and younger kids and working with parents on a daily basis in that space, you recognize how parents can feel embarrassed or they can feel like their kid's not keeping up with the herd. And one thing that we've talked about, and I think for every parent listening, if your child is participating in youth sports and they need to come off the field to go sit with mom or dad, let them do that, right? And at what age would you say we should be looking for kids to kind of push through that versus like come to mom and dad, make sure that they're safe?
I would say sometime between 10 and 12. Now, of course, that's not how it works. Like my son's playing select soccer, started at 9. And I could definitely tell he wasn't ready. I put him out there, he wasn't ready. And so there was a lot of that mitigation. Now, he wasn't going to come running off the field, even though ideally I would have said, hey, let's just let it be. Actually, if I ended up volunteering and reffing a lot of their soccer games so I could just be out there with him and I wasn't instructing or anything like that, he'd just run around and I'd go, hey, goofball, you should smile more. I'd say stuff like that and he'd laugh and he'd go, Dad, and it was just creating this sense of you're safe. I walk around there, I kind of go around, hey, are you sweating? I'd say stuff like that. Just kind of funny stuff. And I'd be like, you need a haircut. I'd just make these little jokes with him and he just felt this sense of, oh, Dad's eye. It was like we were hanging out in the living room. And it was that sense of safety. Now I realize not everybody can do that, but again, the research is really clear on this. Like between 10 and 12 is where they start to emerge into that adolescent space. They start to leave that developmental stage, and you can see it. Most people, you can see it around 9 years old. You start to see the shift.
Yeah.
There's a new ownership of their lives a little bit. They start to kind of go, hey, I think it's my life a little bit, and they start to assert themselves a little more, and at times it's in a frustrating way. But if we invite that, we're going to go, okay, now it's your life. What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Then it's safe to release them. But again, we put the kids out there at 5, and if they were to come over and run over to you, for most parents, they go, no, go back out there, kick the ball. Mm-hmm. And it's weird because developmentally that creates a sense of you're supposed to be doing that and not doing this. Yeah. And there's this feedback thing. And so the structure itself of how we do sports isn't set up. It doesn't adhere to healthy child development. It just doesn't. Yeah. And of course, this is the answer. I mean, I've sat with GMs of NFL football teams and talked about this kind of stuff going, like where they're going, well, how did my first round draft pick lose me $70 million and 2 years later he's gone? Yeah. I literally said it, and I said, well, he wasn't in any way, shape, or form foundationally ready for that level of money, that level of fame, that level of pressure.
Yeah.
It triggered all that trauma from when he was 5 years old, and everybody's going, go, do.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about kids who have success at a young age, or on the flip side, a kid who struggles developmentally in those first couple of years of playing sports, it's very easy for parents instinctually, one, to want to coach, as you mentioned, from the sidelines, instead of create the safe space for them to be able to come to you and express how they really feel and speak their truth. For kids who have that early success, right, even the parents around that aren't the parent of that child look at that kid and say, oh, I want my kid to be like that.
Right. There's an affirmation.
Yeah. And I think for me, having been arguably the best player in the state of Washington from 9 years old till I was 18, I always felt that pressure on some level, whether it was consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that a lot of my friends along the way who were very successful at younger ages started to hit their ceiling. Mm-hmm. And I think if we can unpack the term ceiling, right? Because that's one of my favorite things that we talk about. Yeah. And when we talk about the comfort zone identity, what is my ceiling for being safe, right? Mm-hmm. And then what's my floor? Because if I drop below my floor, there's going to be some motivation to put in some work at the right age. But for these young kids that are maybe having success, right? How do parents help mitigate, as you mentioned, the identity formation of being the baseball player or being smart in school, right? Instead of praising the things of the effort in which your child put in to become more skilled at what they're doing.
Yeah, that's really big, and it's very popular right now when people are talking about these concepts. They're talking about praise the effort, not the accomplishment. Yeah. But even that is slightly flawed because the thing is, what we want to do is affirm identity, which is affirming unconditional love no matter what, right? Rather than affirm the doing of these kinds of things, right? So even like when say, well, I affirm I get people all the time like, well, I just want him to work hard. I want him to go hard. I want him to play hard. Yep. Well, what if you don't want to do that? What if it doesn't feel good to him? What if it feels frustrating? What if you have a kid like my son who's this really sensitive kid that just wants to lay around and watch cartoons, and he just wants to do that? And am I willing to let him be in that safe space? When you were talking about the best player out there, I'm thinking of a soccer player I worked with, and he's 11 years. I think he's 11 years in Major League Soccer. But he showed me this video from when he was like 8 years old. I think it was his first game, and he scored like 6 goals, 7 goals, something like that. And it's a whole home video, VHS kind of thing. And it's like everybody's going nuts. The whole crowd, everybody's going crazy. Holy crap! They're all freaking out. And of course, he's going nuts. And we were talking about this kind of thing, and he goes, at this point is when already, he said, I was starting to feel that like, holy crap, like this intense thing. And the love, this rocket fuel of love at 9 years old, it was just pushing into you, not just from your parents, but from that entire universe around you. And it's forming an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Right? And this is what's fascinating about the formation. We're talking about how the ego, the human ego, the thinking brain, structures the conscious and the subconscious, right? It starts categorizing, it starts compartmentalizing. About 70% of what you do every day comes from that unconscious space. So it was taking the painful parts of that process, which there was pain in it.
Absolutely.
There was fear in it. There was a shadow developing in it. And it was repressing those things into the subconscious space. And then it was holding up here the narrative, you're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome, you're awesome. And then it forms that in this really strong way, and it suppresses this really, really deep, and it creates that line between the conscious and subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a necessary thing to survive because there's too much happening, there's too much input in our world from the deep, what we can call the quantum universe.
Yeah.
And the ego's job is to filter that through to a kind of a structural narrative, like, here's my life, and here's what makes me happy, here's what I enjoy, here's what I like and don't like. That's the kind of thing. But it's also filtering out the pain, pushing it down. Where does it go?
Yeah.
Into the subconscious space. And that's what starts showing up in junior high. That's what everybody's like, well, why did my kid not have fun anymore? I remember sitting with a group of dads in Long Island, New York at a pub after a talk. How do I get my kid to like soccer as much as he likes video games? And I said, well, he likes video games because you're not hanging out there. I said, like, it's a safe, easy space with a narrative that he's awesome, but it's not coming from the love. It's just this kind of thing here. I said, and so there's that. I said, but I know how to make him hate video games. Just stand behind him on the couch and just keep telling him, oh, you should have done this. Oh, you should have done that. Oh, that's not good. Hey, you should have more fun. Tell him that one. You should have more fun. If you do that, we can get him he'll hate the game quickly.
Yeah.
So because especially if he's at that younger age, he's just forming a relationship with himself.
Right.
All this stuff and all that feedback. And that's what you were doing. And so we didn't even know it, but we were setting you up from failure from the beginning.
Yeah. My experience in Little League, being one of the best players, we played in the state championship for 9 and 10 and 11, 12-year-old All-Stars 4 years in a row.
Yeah.
We won it when we were 9, which creates this new expectation, right, that we can be successful and achieve things. And we go back to the state championship as 10-year-old, and we lose.
Right.
We go back again as 11-year-olds, and we win. And I vividly remember throwing a no-hitter and hitting 2 home runs in the state semifinal game, right? And we cruised through the championship, and now we're going to the Western Regional Tournament down in San Bernardino.
Yeah.
And I remember pitching the first inning. I threw it clean inning, 3 strikeouts, no hits, no walks, go to the dugout, grab my bat, hit a home run. I'm leading off, right? And then I go out there the second inning, I can't throw a strike.
Yeah.
I end up having what in the time was called sports-induced asthma, which I did have. But looking back after doing the work that we've done, realizing what I was having was actually a panic attack, right? After 3 or 4 kids, I couldn't throw a strike. I thought I was making excuses at the umpire. I was triggered, right?
Wow.
Not even knowing this at 11 years old. The coaches come out, they do their best to console me. I cry my way all the way to right field, right? And I'm out there just trying to process all this as an 11-year-old kid. Again, revered as the best player in the state on the team. We got a legitimate organization that we have built with Mill Creek Little League at the time. And I'm the face of all this, right? And that's something, again, not every kid's going to experience it at that level.
But everybody does at a small level.
Right, and that's what I think most importantly for parents to take away from all this is the successes and the failures become the definition of our identity.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing we're really trying to separate here is being able to show them that unconditional love for who they are, not what they do.
Right. And the way you do that, a lot of parents go, but how do you do that? They'll ask in Q&As and stuff like that. They'll ask, well, how do you do that? And they go, well, actually, it's interesting because there is a lot of research on this, right? The goal is to be as neutral as possible. We want to respond in a neutral way so that the child is having their experience independent of that feedback, right? Because your presence, your affection, your care, your responses of just going, I'm here, is really actually what they need. They don't need, everybody thinks they need all this encouragement. They don't. They don't. They don't need us to go, good job, buddy. We do it because it's feeding something in us. Subconsciously, we want them to be good. Now, a lot of times we do it because somebody told us that that's what they need. They need positive affirmation or some old thing from the 80s, 70s and 80s, which is we need to, to just give them this positive feedback, but we don't recognize that what they actually need is presence. They're having an experience, they need presence. They just need us to go, it's not good, it's not bad. I mean, me and my son talk about all the time. I just go, hey, there's training, there's Zunte, what do you want to do, man? And I just sit on the sideline. Now, I still have that same instinct, but I recognize it. I have an awareness that when this thing comes up, that makes me want to go, buddy, hey, do this different, do this better, do this, hey, come on, man. And we get in the car and that instant, I can hear that voice in my head, my ego going, ask him how it went, tell him that thing he should do better. And I just sit there and observe that. And I've learned, I've trained myself, I observe that. And I ask him, how are you feeling? I very, very much focus on his feelings. And if he's feeling good, that's fine. If he's feeling bad, that's fine. If he starts talking, that's fine. I just go, okay. are you hungry? And I just let him have the experience as much as humanly possible. And it's interesting because that's a really, that story you just told, the parents listening to this, that's critical.
Yeah.
And we have to understand it for the better the athlete, the more intense that experience is. And that's why there's so many pro athletes that I've worked with. I mean, the anxiety is very, very, very intense for most pro athletes. But everyone's experiencing that to some level. The reason is, of course, your ego had been constructing, working hard, taking all that feedback and constructing a narrative, I am awesome, which when you're in developmental years is, I am loved.
Yeah.
So that not being able to throw a strike represented the loss of love, which for a kid at that age, right, you're still just coming out of those developmental years. That's like death.
Yeah.
I mean, then that's why the panic attack, it was like, I think I'm going to die.
Yeah.
Right? That's the feeling of I'm losing love with every time I throw the ball. That's why I've had players come to me with what they call the yips,
Yeah.
where you're just literally dissociated from the body.
Yeah.
It's so not safe to be here because every time that I throw a ball instead of a strike, the world ends. I lose love. I lose everything. That's why we're all functioning. And all those parents on the sidelines are functioning in the same way. They've got these 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old parts of them saying, going, am I okay? Am I safe? Am I loved? And they're projecting it onto their kids. And then we normalize it and call it good because I just want my kid to have fun. I just want him to do awesome. And I'm just encouraging him. Even my own wife, who's an expert at this, by the way, she was like, so we're not supposed to cheer? And I go, Amy, they're not supposed to cheer. It's that we want to recognize what stage he's in and how he's experiencing that subconsciously. So let's just be quiet if we can and just observe. And so she does that. And it turns out he's out there. He's one of where all the kids on his team are already starting to look to the sideline, look to the sideline. He's just running around there like a goofball. And he's getting better all the time. Even the parents are going, Maverick's he's getting a lot better. Yeah, he's a good athlete. And he watches a lot of soccer with me because I just watch the game and he sits and he asks me questions and I'm letting him have his experience. And now, I know I'm sounding like I'm tooting my own horn here that I'm doing it right. I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
But, as someone I'm kind of burdened with this knowledge, which is what we're trying to do with every parent that's watching this video, burden them with the knowledge, right? So that they have to deal with that kind of dissonance. I'm very burdened with that knowledge. And so I can sit there and continue, like so much in youth sports, to ignore the truth about what is happening to our kids. Mm-hmm. Or I can embrace this, put it into action, and see if over time, while he hits 13, 14, 15, and all those other kids not having a good time anymore, and they're having that anxiety, and they're out there working their butts off subconsciously for their parents' love, will he just keep growing? Will that goofy smile still be on his face? That's the goal.
And I think to highlight what you said, playing with versus coaching your kids.
Yeah.
A lot of parents that I talk to, and even in my own experience with my 3 children, finding a way to create a safe space, to go into the backyard or to a field with them leading the play experience, instead of us coming in with the structure and the coaching points that we want to drill home to teach our kid to have a perfect form of kicking a ball or throwing or hitting or whatever it may be. Would you say that focusing on that play experience without all the structure and the rules and this is how you got to do it, because as you alluded to before, that creates that coach-son dynamic, not that dad or mom-son dynamic or daughter dynamic, right? Yeah. So what are your thoughts on the play experience for parents with their kids, right? And where do they kind of create that boundary within the space that you alluded to with your son?
Yeah.
How do we continue to find ways to do physical activities, right? Because exercise is great. Yeah. Skill development is obviously something every parent wants to be able to tap into in a healthy way. And I think you've already shown kind of what the way things have been done and how that can be toxic or counterproductive, I think is a better way to put it.
Sure.
What would you say for parents that are looking to get their kids extra repetitions at something, but are becoming conscious of the damage that can be done in that space?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, because play is what we call a psycho-spiritual state of being. Play and work are 2 kind of states of being in relationship with something. So if you can do a sport or you can do work. I mean, it's the old Mary Poppins thing, right? In every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun and snap, the job's a game. The idea is, if you are playing, there's nothing being earned. If you are working, there is something being earned, and that's a subconscious relationship we have with that thing, right? So a child naturally plays. It's their natural state of being. It's literally like a natural language to them. More than English, it's a language, right? So if you play with your kids, you want them to get reps, you got to play with them. right? But if you play with them, you have to enter into that state of being with them, and they can feel it. We all know it, right? And I've struggled to play in my life. It's something that was kind of taken from me in my early childhood. It was like we'd play a little bit, I'd play with some Legos and stuff like that, but the way that some of the trauma from my childhood and stuff function was that playing with my kids does not come naturally for me. It's very difficult. I always want to set up some sort of competitive structure. You know what I mean? All right, we're going to do this, and here's the point system, and here's who wins and who loses. And I learned pretty early, my son, we play Pokemon. We play the Pokemon card game, and losing, he just couldn't handle it. Mm-hmm. It was too much. It was too risky. There was something on the line. So I've learned now, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I want my son to have fun and learn soccer skills, like if I want him to improve his skill set, just play. And all I have to do that is put a ball somewhere. I actually have soccer balls littered around my living room. And because he'll walk in and I'll see him, he'll get the ball and he'll start dribbling around. And if I want to do it with him and like say I want to increase the speed or something like that, I'll just go and steal the ball from him real quick, and he'll laugh, and then I'll let him steal it back, and then I'll steal it back, and pretty soon the dog's chasing it, and pretty soon, and I'm watching him, and he'll go 15 minutes, and all he's doing is moving at high speed with the ball at his feet, right? The entering into that play is key, and that means laughter, and that means not structure. It means that I have to take the things in my brain that say there is something here to be accomplished, and I have to let those things go, and I have to let a natural outflow. It's one of the reasons why the world's better than we are at soccer. It's one of the reasons why we're better than the world at basketball, is because those kids, there's in the rest of the world on a soccer field, a dirt field somewhere in sub-Saharan Africa, kids are just playing. They're not receiving feedback from mom and dad and coaches. They're just moving fast, and as a result, they start over time. Naturally, competition starts to enter in, structure starts to enter in. When I was a kid in Kenya, when we got about 13, 14 years old, there was always the kids in the neighborhood like, hey, let's put a team together. Let's go play against. We literally go play against a different neighborhood. We'll go play against their team. Our captains would get together. There was no parents structuring this. It just naturally came from the developmental state we were in. But when we're little, play is just a flow, right? And so that's the key. If we want our kids to get better, let them play. That's it.
Yeah. Remove the structure.
Absolutely.
Create the safe space.
Yeah.
So wrapping this up, looking forward to our next episode.
Yeah.
Diving into the conscious and unconscious mind, which we've alluded to a little bit in this episode, but we look forward to having you guys back for our next episode where we can dive deeper into that and give you some tools and tips to be able to work through this with your child.
Yeah, that's a big one.
At whatever level your kids participate in youth sports, you and your kids will benefit greatly from the resources 3A Athletics has carefully created to protect the foundation of your child's identity and your relationship. At the same time, these resources can help you unlock your child's true potential in sports and in life. The sooner you get started, the more successful your kid can be. Resources like Hero, an interactive guidebook taking parents of young athletes on a journey through their own experiences and perspectives, and how to approach the balance between being a loving parent and encouraging your child to push through challenges and excel in their endeavors. 3A Sports Journals. Many athletes don't journal because they simply don't know how it can be helpful to their process. Elite athletes around the world use journaling from an early age to help them face the tough challenges of sports. If your kids want to go from good to great, they need to learn how to journal. 3A Athletics. Awareness, activation, achievement. From good to great. See us at 3athletics.com.